Hi, my name is Allegra Korver,
And I'm Alyssa Nardi.
and we're going to be talking about the 2014 U.S. Farm Bill. The U.S. Farm Bill is this really huge piece of legislation that deals with everything from international trade to agribusiness to food stamps to genetically modified organisms, insurance tax policy. But primarily, it deals with subsidies, and that's what Alyssa and I are really going to be focusing on today. Subsidies create a lot of problems, primarily ones related to nutrition, climate change, consolidation and monopolies in the marketplace, and international trade.
Here's a visual on the cost of healthy eating, and the obesity epidemic in America has been increasing, and at the same time the cost to buy fruits and vegetables has been increasing while the cost to buy processed foods like chips has been decreasing. It costs $3 to buy 312 calories of healthy foods like broccoli and grapes, while that same $3 can buy you over 3,000 calories of unhealthy foods like chips and soda. So if someone is crunched on with how much money they are able to spend, but they still want to get a lot of calories in, they will probably buy the more unhealthy food. What we subsidize, this is what causes the past two slides. The government mostly subsidizes commodity crops, for example, cotton, wheat, corn, rice, and soy, which is used in a lot of unhealthy foods. And since that is subsidized, businesses will produce more of them, which will make their price very low for consumers. While fruits and vegetables are not subsidized as much, therefore, it's harder for businesses to produce a lot of fruits and vegetables, which makes them more expensive for consumers.
So here's where the Farm Bill has been in the news and is kind of relevant to today. In 2012, the Farm Bill was up for renewal because typically it's a 5-year bill that's either renewed automatically or goes through the political process. But because of the political gridlock and controversy and debate at the time, the Agriculture Act of 2014 didn't pass until this past February. That lengthy passage and debate time really increased the public's and the media's focus on the bill and raised a lot of concerns about just how effective and how efficient the legislation is and the kind of impacts that it has on American lives. As I was saying, that passage time increased the media's attention on the issue, which led to exposés from virtually all of the major American news outlets, such as The Economist, The New York Times, The New Republic, Mother Jones, and The Washington Post. And around that same time, Jeff Bridges actually produced a documentary called A Place at the Table, which was this really fascinating documentary about food insecurity and nutrition in America. It really focuses heavily on the Farm Bill and the kind of impacts that it has on American health. The last time that the Farm Bill was really in the courts in a really prominent way was in 2008, where there was a major case between the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation and the American Growers Insurance Company, and it was about changed policies in the Farm Bill at the time. It ended up going to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and their original decision was reversed. Although the Farm Bill is a really enormous piece of legislation, it's not particularly controversial to the parties involved, such as insurance corporations, farmers, and the government. So it doesn't turn up in the courts a lot, but there is a lot of public interest in the bill itself. So subsidies have been around for almost 100 years now. They began in 1922 with the Grain Futures Act, where the government was basically giving handouts to farmers as a form of income stabilization because it's just such an uncertain career path because of its dependence on weather and viruses and bugs and things like that. During the Depression, the subsidy program grew out of control, grew exponentially, and it really hasn't changed since then. The subsidy system has remained largely unchanged until just this past February. With the passage of H.R. 2642, primarily focusing on sections 1116 and 1117, the structure of subsidies changed drastically. So now, instead of direct handouts like they'd been receiving since 1922, farmers now receive subsidies through crop insurance, which basically ensures that um, whether the market price of a certain crop drops below a certain level, or whether um, the weather is bad or there's natural disasters, farmers are always insured a specific price or specific compensation for the crops they grow. Primarily, though, just staple crops like corn, soy, wheat, and cotton.
Large businesses do get large subsidies, and there is a reason for this. The more crops a company or farm produces, the larger the subsidies they receive are. And the big agribusinesses receive more money from the government because they do produce a lot. And while local small farms do not produce a lot, so they don't receive large amounts of subsidies. This creates a cycle of the big businesses receiving more money and becoming more powerful, and they also tend to produce foods that are not very healthy compared to those produced by local farmers because it costs a lot less to produce unhealthy foods. So these big businesses are just producing a lot of unhealthy food, and it's just a cycle of them being able to do that. There are a couple current subsidy issues that affect many aspects of society. It affects nutrition. The main goal of the big agricultural businesses are to produce a lot of a crop in a short amount of time. And the only types of crops that can be produced this way are staple crops like soy, wheat, and corn, which have very little nutritional value and usually end up in processed foods that are cheaper. Therefore, when people go to the grocery store, those cheaper foods and the most plentiful items tend to not be good for your health. The subsidy system also affects climate change. Since agribusinesses are looking to produce a lot of a crop in a short amount of time, they tend to use the methods that make this possible. Pesticides and herbicides make this possible but have a huge impact on water and soil health, as well as impacting bee populations. Monoculture practices, which are when places plant large areas of only one crop, and this adversely affects biodiversity, and the use of fossil fuels in machinery and shipment of crops pollutes the air. So climate change is really affected in the air and in the soil and with biodiversity. Consolidation is also an effect because the bigger farming companies are already very powerful, and they're the ones receiving a majority of the subsidies because they are producing so much, which therefore makes them even more powerful, which therefore causes a monopoly system, and this hurts smaller local farmers and makes the food market less competitive. Trade is affected as well because large agricultural businesses produce a lot and receive a lot of subsidies. This makes the prices of their crops very low, as we've talked about. When these businesses sell their crops overseas, they're competing with small farmers in third world countries who are very poor and need the money, but these big businesses are beating these small farms, which hurts the local economies in these countries and the workers there.
So clearly there are some reforms that need to be made to the subsidy system. In the University of Pennsylvania Law Review, one author recommended removing the Farm Bill's price supports or the crop insurance program that we've talked about to encourage farmers to shift to healthier crop production. She said that when farm income is no longer tied to producing program crops like corn and soy, farmers can focus on high-value crops such as fruits and vegetables. The increased production of fruits and vegetables will in turn make produce more affordable for consumers. She also noted that encouraging polyculture, or farming many different crops at once, would reduce the need for inputs like chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and patented GMOs because cycling through soil through different uses replenishes nutrients, inhibits annual pests, and improves plant health. Reforming crop insurance would also eliminate the monopolies created under the status quo, as well as eliminating America's artificial trade advantage. In conclusion, the 2014 U.S. Farm Bill is this huge piece of legislation that impacts everything from international relations to farmers in Watauga County. Its crop insurance program is a significant portion of that, affecting many different parties, including agribusinesses and the government, and that creates a bunch of different problems from nutrition, the environment, competition, and international trade. By eliminating the crop insurance program, we can alleviate many of the problems associated with the Farm Bill and create a better America.
Thank you.